sure a lot that is hitting the headlines is the Health PS sacking. We will be delving into that in regards to KEMSA. And not only that, we will also be looking. There is a new sheriff in town as a new governor, not in the counties, but at the Central Bank of Kenya, CBK. Yesterday also, in matters of security and regional balance and integration, the PS for Interior, Mr. Kithure Kindiki, has talked about reopening of the Kenya-Somalia border. If you do not know, this border was closed by former President, the late Mwai Kibaki. It has been closed for about 11 years, and they talked about reopening the border in phases in the next 90 days. That is not only the only thing that is happening in the country. Well, the prices of fuel shot up again, and we are looking at how Kenyans now have to brave the hard economic times coupled with the recession that we have globally, and more specific, the cost of living is currently about to also disturb Kenyans the more. Other than that, the finance bill, remember, you only have about 4 days, because on the 20th day of this month, the public participation will be locked, and now the bill will be in Parliament. So if you have any suggestions, comments, or even where you are watching us from, we highly recommend. Remember, we are also live from the broadcasting house here in the county of Nairobi, and also we are also live on all our social media platforms. So we have plenty to talk about, not forgetting the politics of the day. My name is Njue. I will be hosting a political analyst and also an advocate of the High Court to try and put these things into perspective, and we really do appreciate your feedback via our social media platforms as we are live. Now, straight to the topic of discussion today. Well, the mosquitoes are here because of the rains, and the mosquitoes have beaten the first PS in relations to the malaria, mitigation progress by the government, and the bug that beat the health CS. Let's look at that story where Dr. Josephine Mboro, the Principal Secretary, State Department for Public Health, becomes the first high-ranking official in the Kenya Kwanza administration to be kicked out by President William Ruto. Dr. Mboro was fired alongside the entire board of the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority, KEMSA, in connection with expenditure of the Global Fund in regards to the National Malaria Program targeting low-income households in the malaria endemic areas. Irungo Nyakera takes over as the new board chairperson of the troubled KEMSA. Well, as I had alluded to earlier, I will be hosting a panel of experts, and Mboro, the Principal Secretary, State Department for Public Health, has become the first top government official in the Kenya Kwanza administration to be shown the door by President William Ruto. The sacking, according to a statement released by the head of Public Service, Felix Koskei, is linked to the expenditure of Global Fund on the National Malaria Program targeting low-income households. Dr. Andrew Mutava has been appointed as acting CEO of KEMSA, taking over from suspended CEO Terry Ramadan. The entire KEMSA board has also been kicked out, and Hezron Onyeku Omolo, Bernard Kiprui Bet, Dr. Jane Masinga, and Jane Nyangatui Mbatia have been appointed new board members. The sacking follows a promise by the head of state in a TV interview on Sunday night to crack the whip and streamline the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority.
You will see results.
Mr. President,
I want to give you my commitment. I will clean up cancer. Whatever it takes.
Mr. President,
whatever it costs, I will clean it up.
The head of state underscored his commitment to entrenching ethos of good governance by promoting accountability and openness in management of public affairs. The president reiterating committing to a new era in the management of the nation's health care by ensuring that no Kenyan is denied the dignity of affordable medical care due to corruption. The head of state promising his administration will spare no effort in rebuilding KEMSA supply chain management system to ensure efficacy and accountability in the provision of medical supplies across the country. Well, the first casualty in the Kenya Kwanza government, top-ranking Dr. Josephine Mboro, the PS for State Department for Public Health, has been shown the door in regards to KEMSA. And now allow me to introduce my first guest. He identifies with whatever happened yesterday quite passionately because he is a doctor himself. Dr. Harun Isaac Hassan. A pleasure to have you, Doc.
Thank you very much.
Karibu sana.
Ben, asante kwa kukaribisha sisi.
Well, yes, I watched the whole president's interview and he said, and you can see the passion in his eyes, I will do whatever it takes, meaning that he is ready to even lose friends, even political cronies, just to ensure that we have a smooth, a well-managed Kenya Medical Supplies Authority. I would like to pick your mind on that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the president has done the first thing in the right direction. I think he did the right thing. One of the important things that we must always consider is that when you are given a job, you do your best. And when you are doing your best, you make sure that the mandate you are given, you are able to discharge it in a manner that will going to fit the employer's rules or engagement. And one important thing that we have observed is that I think the president will not going to entertain any person or any of the employees who are likely to mismanage the responsibilities that they are given. And we know historically very well, KEMSA has been hitting the headlines for many reasons.
The wrong reason.
And to be specific, for the wrong reason. And sometimes it went even to the extent that when massive deaths were occurring during COVID pandemic, still Kenyans who are managing that place were able to loot, and the so-called the famous word, the KEMSA billionaires,
yes,
emerged from there.
From COVID?
Yeah, from COVID.
Yes.
And when you look at it very keenly, I think people don't care about Kenyans. People care about themselves, and each and every person has learned to become a thief. People will want to steal from any opportunity that they get. And I think the president this time around has shown Kenyans, particularly people who are accountable for specific state ministries, that business will not be as usual, where you steal and you hit the headline and eventually you go and start comforting yourself with the money that you have looted. One thing that we will expect now, after he has taken this action, is that procedurally an employee must be, proved to why he has been discharged from his duties. And one of the important things that I think the president and his the rest of the team should now engage into is a thorough investigation to be conducted to prove that their dismissal was justified, and of course they should also carry their own cross. They should go to corridors of justice so that they take responsibility for what they have done, and if they have looted, that resources must come back to the government coffer. We have a lot of challenges at the moment, and we don't want to enrich individuals. We really want to look at a country where each and every person's given responsibility discharges the way it is supposed to be discharged. The other thing that I will probably expect now to come is, the Global Fund is an external entity, and those are donor funding agencies. And the president, by taking this step, I think he has restored confidence among the donors that the president will not going to entertain issues that are not in favor of the common mwananchi, not individuals who are taking their responsibility in the wrong directions. So I think one thing, first and foremost, he has improved, he has shown that, he has proved that no one will going to play around with his government, which is a very good thing. Secondly, he has proved that if you are given a responsibility and you fail to deliver it, you will going to be answerable as an individual. There is nothing called collective. Thirdly, another position is vacant. I mean, the PS vacant is vacant. So Kenyans are expecting to...
You should apply.
I should apply. I think Kenyans are expecting for another PS to take the role. And I think people who are used to working very strict and straight and deliver their work are the people now I am sure he will going to look for. Not because initially there was that issue of just establish the government without looking into quite deeply the qualities and credibility of part of the team which are employed. So I think this time around this position will be thoroughly interviewed and we will all bid for it. And we're hoping that the president will going to look at people who are willing to serve this country, not people who are willing to loot this country.
It's quite unfortunate, and I believe if you look at all the other previous governments, I believe this is the fastest top-ranking government official to be fired. Less than what, about 6-7 months since she took over office as PS?
Yes. I think there are two things. One, first and foremost, you don't try an injured lion, because he will bite you very hardly. The president is already facing a lot of things. There is high cost of living, there is pressure from the opposition, there is of course as they say always the current budget, last year's budget has already been over exaggerated, and he's not able to manage that. So the government was bankrupt when he has picked it up. So there are quite a number of things that the president was already going through that he doesn't want to entertain issues within his government. And I think that's the right thing that each and every person who has a lot of external pressures will do, because he'll expect minimum pressure from his quarters, and he will expect much of his team to be finding a solution to the current external challenges that the government is facing. We have just come out from drought. Now we are hearing everywhere there are floods, and then all of a sudden you also see that now the influx of the outmath of these floods will going to cause a lot of health issues. Now you hear there are cholera outbreaks everywhere. You hear there's an outbreak of malaria, dengue fever, particularly in Mandera. Currently people are all having dengue fever. Of course, issues of COVID has not disappeared. Recently when they released their data, they said we still have infections going on. Recently, we saw also issues related to HIV, TB. Yesterday, I was seeing on the televisions that Kenya is still facing a challenge. In 2030, we were supposed to be eradicating HIV, gender-based violence, and many other communicable diseases that will have been cleaned up. And it doesn't look like by 2030, Kenya will going to achieve that. So I think the take in terms of his reaction is justified, in that if you are already dealing with all that, and we know we have a lot of challenge. You see, governors are providing a lot of pressure, saying that they are not receiving their money. That means hospitals are not getting also drugs, because governors are supposed to get drugs from KEMSA. Government is saying they have no much money to do that at the moment, and you get some money from the donors, then all of a sudden you want to tint the image of the government by mismanaging the resources that are trickling from international donors. That will be something that any president who is at heart with his people in the country will react to. So I think it is justified. I know most of the previous governments, they could still entertain, because probably there's link that they had with individuals who are doing those things. So I think by concluding that, I think the president's move was a drastic one, which was rightfully done, and I think other accounting officers will be now very much watchful
It's a good thing.
Going to work towards the right thing, and everyone will not put his signature anywhere aimlessly.
It's a good thing you've said drastic measure, and I would really praise the president for doing that. If at all, even the Global Fund, they're talking about this deal is not quite okay. So the president has cracked the whip. And I do remember this is not the first, she will not be the first top government official to be fired. But are we gonna be in a situation where we have fired people but we do not be accountable? We've talked about heads rolling. Firing someone is one thing, but following it up, the EACC should thoroughly investigate, because we are also still waiting for the report in regards to the COVID millionaires. KEMSA has been on the headlines for a lot of wrong reasons. A very practical example is the ASO regions, and you come from Mandera. They have been complaining about drugs not getting to where they should. EACC, the Director of Public Prosecution, do you believe that the president needs to move a notch higher and everyone implicated in this mess should carry his or her own cross in court?
Yes, I think that is that's the right thing to do, and we are thinking probably that's the direction he will going to take. But there are two things. I think each and every state department has been given their roles to deliver. And EACC have a mandate to investigate all corruption cases. And I think one way or another, if there was certain protection for COVID billionaires in KEMSA, this is the right time now for them to move on, because the president, the current president, will not going to protect anyone. So if they have any evidence to prove that COVID billionaires looted money from KEMSA, individuals should be taken to court. Those properties and assets should be surrendered back to the government. I think it should be sufficient enough to pay salaries, because we know the government is facing a lot of challenge in terms of paying salaries, as we experienced previous months. I think DPP per se doesn't do investigation. So the investigative agencies, once they deliver their part, I'm very sure DPP will going to also pick up his task. And if he doesn't, then of course the government should also, the president should also question him, or question the EACC team why certain investigations are not rolling very fast and we are not seeing cases heading to the court. And if there are no evidence, there's no need of holding someone. If you don't have sufficient evidence to take someone to court, don't just keep him for no reason. Just because you think this person was aired sometimes back and he became a person of interest, you still want to continue keeping him. So I think we should balance everything. The right of the individual and of course the government should also take their role as it is supposed to be. So long as there is evidence, heads have to roll up. Corruption is one of the things that is killing us. And if we don't address corruption the right way in which it is prescribed in our constitution, and of course there are those state institutions that have been mandated to do this, EACC, Director of Public Prosecution, if they don't do their role, I think the president shouldn't shy of that as well. He should move in and tell them, this is what we expect, people must deliver. We'll find a lot of challenges sometimes in cases that were earlier on mentioned in KEMSA. Probably they were senior officials who are interested in the case and then distort evidences. And now it becomes very difficult for EACC to conclude a case that happened around 5 years ago, simply because they can see the case, the incident has happened, there are some justifications, but the whole of evidence has been distorted. So it becomes difficult for them to pull out of the case, and it also, on the other hand, becomes difficult for them to take the case forward to DPP. Of course, DPP will going to ask several questions before he takes the case to court. So you will realize that there are a lot that is happening. And corruption is not only about the monetary aspect.
Yes.
Corruption is about the process also as well, in which we engage people, the process in which a criminal is prosecuted. If it is distorted, that's already a corruption also. It's a corrupt process. And I think if the president remains firm, the way we are seeing now, because he promises and he acts, then we tend to think a lot will going to change.
All right.
First and foremost, Kenyans, I think, when you are given responsibility, you fear. Fear is something that has been instilled in most of the state accounting officers after this incident. And that way it might control issues that will happen from now onward, and people will be very cautious. But Kenyans are very clever, so they will always find a way.
And speaking about, I remember the president, as you have seen in that clip, he's very passionate. He's talking about whatever it takes, meaning that he knows indeed. We have seen in Kenya when a top government official either is hounded out of office or is fired, you find there are people who talk about, oh, you've let a person down. This is going to have a political dimension, and also could have a political ripple effect, because we do understand the semantics of how government is formed. You have to get somebody from each and every corner of the republic. Is this, you are a political analyst, is this going to affect anything politically, or does this have a political dimension?
Yes, I think it will, but it might not be for now, simply because you know, the president, when he has taken the whip, definitely he has consulted with his advisors and his other team. There are two things that are likely to happen. One is the current action he has taken warrants that it will go to interfere with his political mileage. I don't think so, simply because he has not yet replaced, and he's talking about service delivery. And in service delivery, I think the key thing that people look at is whether this particular person, as an individual given a task, should take his role the way it is required. Even your own relatives will run away from you when you are implicated with the wrong thing. So I don't think if there will be any issue at the moment politically. And I think in the current situation, he has a long way to go. For 5 years, definitely. And in the process, politicians will shape their processes so that they don't also destroy their political ambition. I think the president at the moment, he's pushing people away from politics and diverting the mind of people into the real work. And you know, Kenyans are used to, we come out of this campaign and we go into another campaign. Azimio la Umoja team decided to push us into politics by initiating a lot of, political tensions, demonstrations, and those other things. And, if that continues for long, it means then the next 5 years we will continue be in politics, politicking all through, and there will be no services that will be delivered to Kenyans who have elected people whom they expect to deliver services to them. So I don't think, so in essence your question, I don't think if this will have any political implication. It's just an officer who has failed to perform his duty. And if you have his or her duty, and if you have failed to do or deliver, then the employer has the right to terminate. And particularly if you do a gross misconduct, because corruption is gross misconduct in the terms of employment. And as a senior top civil servant, I think the only thing the president can do is to move you out of that place, because you have a lot of influence within the ministry. Even if you are left or moved to another ministry, the powers go with you, and still you can interfere with evidences and investigation of the case that you have been implicated with.
All right.
So I don't think if this will have any political interference with the president's likes or whatever it is.
All right. Now, also the board, Tabitha Ramadan, who happened to be the CEO, was also shown the door, and Irungu Nyakera now takes over as the board chairperson of the troubled KEMSA, together with a number of board members. What are some of the things that the new board, or the duties that the new board must do first to ensure that as the president said, that he will streamline KEMSA no matter what it takes. The new board has a new role and heavy duty to clean up KEMSA.
It's very difficult first. I think it's good to know that it's difficult to change something in the government system. They will have to sail in first, just pick it from where they found. But there are a few things that they need to do. For example, as the board of directors for that particular authority, you come in and you know this board had issues. You need to do what is called institutional capacity assessment, where you will identify what is there, what is not there, what systems are in place, what kind of procedures are in place, policies that are being utilized there. And I know the government doesn't have it doesn't have challenge in establishing policies. Policies are there, but what is it that has not been done for the institution smoothly adopt their policy and procedures and comply with that? So we look at issues of compliance, we look at issues of staffing, human resource capacity, you look at issues of systems that are there, procurement procedures, policies. All these things need to be assessed, reassessed basically, and identify where the gaps exist. So as a board, I think the first thing they should do is understand the institution. And in understanding the institution, they must do what is called the capacity assessment of that institution. Institutional capacity assessment, once it's done, the outcome of that forms the blueprint of what needs to be done and what needs not to be done. And if that is established, then of course, the PS only signs on. There are a lot of people who play a lot of roles. For example, procurement. Their procurement team who have not been touched now. They only checked off the top cream. But who are the people who do these documentations? Are those people who are down there, who understands those policies, who understands those procedures of procurement. And if those guys are not also checked, then I think you will just be there, you'll be frustrated, and you may end up failing again. At one point, you may also be dragged into malpractices that has been in place. What is it that they should also still look into is that they should find a system that can be closely monitored. Digitalization is one of the things that has helped many institutions in monitoring their procedures. For example, procurement procedures shouldn't be manual, and each and every person must take responsibility in ensuring that all the procedures within each step are adhered to. Once those systems are put in place, I think there will be minimum, malpractices that leads to such a crisis that we have already seen. The other thing that I think we need to look into, which is primarily their role, is to make sure that they sit in all tender committees, so that every tender that is being released, they take collective responsibility. That way means then, if there is malpractice, it is all of them who have taken. For example, now the board has been quashed, but now when you look at it very keenly, probably it was 2-3 of them who are involved, but others also carried the cross for them. But if they establish a system, because it's a very sensitive place, it's a place which KEMSA usually deals with a lot of money, a lot of, drugs are very expensive. A small packet costs a lot of money. So it's a lot of money that, revolves around KEMSA, both from donor and from exchequer. So the best thing is they have to take responsibility, all of them, in ensuring that any tender that is approved must be approved by all of them. Then, of course, the ministry, the PSR now, it also infiltrates up to the PS. That means then there must be a board, there must be committee, tender committee from the ministry, from their side, and even from the donor agency. For example, Global Fund representative, there are quite a number of LFS who represent Global Fund in each country, local financial agency. that represent Global Fund. They should also now, in such a tender, they should be invited to sit there so that this process becomes very smooth, and as soon as you release this tender, each and every person know that this tender went through a watertight procedure, and the award was clean.
Okay. Now, you've mentioned donors, and looking at our health system, it's also quite ailing because we do rely heavily on donor, and the Global Fund is just one of them. They have projects in TB, in malaria, in polio, HIV and AIDS, and the money that they pump into Kenya and most of African countries, they want that money to be spent prudently. They do not want any pilferages when it comes to their money. Does this erode the confidence that international community and our donor friends have in the country? Because the moment that they are the one who raise the red flag. Does that erode that confidence?
I think first and foremost, the donor fraternity and the government have collaborative agreement.
Yes.
And in that collaborative agreement, there are certain regulations. There are donor regulations that the government must adhere to. And when we say the government, the donor regulations will be adhered to, we mean each institutions that donors are giving money. For example, KEMSA, for example, National AIDS Council, for example, the ministry, the primary healthcare thing. Every agency that is given money have all the responsibility to look after that money based on the donors' regulations, policies, and procedures. And of course, that does not override the government procedures. What happened is that the government procedures are very clear. The donors' procedures are very clear. You merge them and make sure that no one does something contrary to those two procedures. And they always say if the donor procedure is more, if the government procedure or the institutions that is being funded procedure is more superior or more tight than the donor, they are allowed to use their procedures without going into the donors' procedures, which in essence cannot go very far from each other. But what is important is that confidence means is the money that we are giving being lost. If the money is not lost, then donors have all the right to build, have confidence in you and pump more money to help the institutions to run their function. But if they see there's a bit of infiltration, there's a bit of leakage in terms of the resources that they have sent, and the purpose of the resource is not going the way it was intended, then what happens is that they will always flag you red. And once you are flagged, sometimes they will withdraw completely your funding. So they don't completely give you money. I remember sometimes back, was it the same issue or it was which agency that HIV had an issue?
Yes.
The money was utilized for other purposes and the donor could not agree to that. So confidence comes later, but what brings confidence is that you must adhere to the procedures and policies that has been agreed. And finally, donor confidence is built by such actions that the president has taken. Government takes responsibility for the actions of their employees. And once the top leadership takes that responsibility, that means then, even if something has happened, the donor sees that there is the right direction the government is heading to, and they know very well that at any one time, if anything that is unprocedural happens, the government is also on their radar to make sure that this does not happen again. The only thing that now currently is an issue for us is that it has gone through all the government apparatus. We did not see, and then we were flagged by the donor.
Yes.
You get the point?
Yes.
So that means the donor is not one-on-one. The donor wanted to release only, the final approval so that Now you go on. And
but they realize there are some
something which is not in order. An example of something that I always look at is simple thing. You know, there are some things, I don't want to use a very bad word, but there are some things that is, I call it stupidity. For example, a company that is not registered anywhere.
Yes.
How do you go and submit a company that is not even registered in this country and you have given them an award? Looks like...
And actually there's a tender committee.
Exactly. And it looks like all those guys were...
compromised.
Yeah, I mean, there was something which is going on. Because the first thing you look at in terms of tender awards is the company genuine? Is it registered? Due diligence, you do due diligence for the company, including tax compliance, including registration, including the latest directors in the last 3 months, not even previous ones. Because when you are to be given an award, the last 3 months you must bring the directors from the registrar of companies. Then capacity in terms of how can you give out billions of tender and yet you even don't know the capacity of this person completely. They never had any capacity. So it looks like one way or another everybody was compromised who sat in that committee. And it's a shame for the donor to say, hey, there are basic things you guys have not looked into. For example, we can't see this company in any of the lists that you have submitted in the registrar company of registrar of companies. And you know that someone is just telling you that you don't reason very well. You don't know what you are doing. Okay. And that's what I think pushed the president to take that drastic action of wiping everybody. Because one way or another, someone will have just said, no, this company does not exist anywhere, we cannot give out. Even if you are interested and you want to give out to this company, it is not possible. And you know, once you have a dissenting opinion from the rest of the people, then what happens is that you have the right to flag it yourself and say, we have not agreed on this company, I see there are irregularities with this company, we are not going to issue it. And the moment you say that as a committee member, then question arises and that cannot proceed. But if you all say yes, then I think...
I totally concur, because as reports I have it is that the Global Fund is the one which raised the red flag, not even the Kenyan government. But let me rope in Wakili. He's an advocate of the High Court and also a leadership and governance expert. Thank you so much, Gibson Gisore, for having time for us. And I'm going to throw you deep into the deep end. The first top-ranking government official in the Kenya Kwanza government, slightly over what? Over 7 months, and she was fired together with the board of KEMSA totally by the president, who said that he is going to do everything possible in his powers to do that. Are we expecting to have a date with them in court? They might even make you a call, give you a call on representation.
Thank you, Ben, for inviting me to the show. And regarding your question, it's interesting because for me, I first want to commend the president because for far too long we have entertained a lot of things which, to my understanding or the way I can put it, is that it's a lot of mediocrity whereby we lose money because KEMSA is not the first scandal. We have had this, I think, should be the 4th or the 5th. Yeah. The ones which are on record. And during his interview on, was it on Sunday or on Sunday, he was very clear and categorical when he was asked by some of the media journalists. He said, just don't ask anything, you will see action. You will be able to see the action, so that and indeed it didn't take long, we have seen the action, and this is a strong statement to actually depict that the president is serious on issues of fighting corruption. For the longest, people have actually, even one of the questions which was coming up was, do you believe in fighting corruption? And I mean, I think this vindicates him that he has acted on something which people feel that it's something which has been a joke for too long. So as to his actions, they were very dire, they were very consequential, and I think it was very deliberate to send a statement that you shouldn't be able to mess up with anything during his tenure. And everybody now among the PSS, even the CSS, will be scared. I'm sure even the CS is scared, Steve, that, I mean, this came too close to me.
Yes.
Yes, so that is the kind of fear we want public officials to be able to operate under, so that they can be able to be very clear and deliberate in their actions, so that we ensure we don't lose money. In any case, I think also to play back, President at some point had been asked in the campaigns whether he would be able to fight corruption, and he was very clear. He said that there will be no money to steal. I think this is it, that he's actually playing to what he said, that people will not be able to mess with him the way they have been messing before. And it sends a message that the president is in control, and that gives confidence to the country that we can be able to rely on him, at least for this one. So on the actions, yes, you asked on the second part that these people can be able to go to court. Yes, they can be able to go to court, because I believe that the process, however it plays to the public that the president sending a message, still these people have rights, and their constitution is very clear on how you should be able to dismiss somebody. So they can be able to proceed to court and have the decision maybe overturned, depending on the procedurality, because there are some other people who are fired. You don't know whether they were actually clearly implicated or they were culpable. And the aspect of culpability only is something which can be able to be deliberated by the courts, and that's where the courts are there. The Labor Relations Court has very able judges who can be able to look at the actions. It's something in law which we call administrative law. Administrative law deals with issues of procedures and processes of somebody making a decision. So much as the president made the decision which cuts across, then there could be, if somebody feels that indeed he shouldn't be able to be victimized for something he didn't do, he has a right to still go to court and ask to be reinstated, or at least be compensated so that he lives honorably, because that is now dishonorable. This being dismissed dishonorably.
Yeah.
And in the military, your record indicates that though this is not the military, but even the public service, you cannot be employed anywhere. So it's very important that these people actually be able to go to court and fight for their rights. I will be glad to take care of their briefs to get them on the process, but I'm sure they have their advocates who can be able to guide them properly.
And still in the courts, because at the end of the day they can also be prosecuted, despite the fact that they can also get relief from the courts. The net can be cast wider, because as Daktari has talked about, now the PS has not only quite carried her cross, it's her cross, and because of what she did not do. She did not look at exactly what was happening in her house. She didn't put her house in order, and I believe that is why the president told the PS that Josephine, you have just to step aside. Yes. Can the net be cast a little bit wider, because there is the tender process? The entire board of KEMSA was dismantled yesterday, and there are people who are involved, even in the ministry. Because I'm quite sure when the president took this decision, he had diligently looked at the KEMSA, he had looked at the deal, the Global Fund deal, to make such a decision.
Yes, I think it's a very important point you raised there. Let me start with the part where you talk about casting the net wider. Yes, it can be casted wider, so that we be able to clean up. And he was very categorical that whatever it takes, you will have to take action, and you will have to clean up KEMSA. And I think he's doing that. The aspect of prosecution, yes, these people, much as they can be able to go to court, the state actually, what the state should actually be able to do through the TPP is to first initiate charges against them. So if you just dismiss them and don't charge them, then they have a right to go and fight and say, we have not even been prosecuted anyway. We didn't do any crime. We are just dishonorably discharged. And if somebody believes that indeed whatever it is that they was dismissed for, he was not clearly culpable, or there is no evidence to linking him to that, then he can be able to have his day in court. So the aspect of casting the net wider, yes, the DPP should swing into action. They do investigation. They ask the police. He can write to the IG to do investigations on the same. So that is another process which we expect to be done, because it doesn't end there that somebody has messed something and then they just given a slap on the face and told you step aside and go home quietly. We need these people to know that the consequences can run deep, so that they cannot be able to repeat this, and then it's a lesson to all and sundry that public resources are not supposed to be for plundering. Because if the Global Fund, which is highly supporting the Ministry of Health, is feeling like we are giving this money and these people are just eating it anyhow, then we are not likely to have any money. Remember, we are also having physical challenges in regards to the amount available to even give to the counties. So if the little friends or the little money which our friends are willing to give is also being misused, then we are sinking into a deeper hole. And healthcare is something which cuts across the country and touches lives of people. So it means that that's actually like killing people, because once you take away the money, there are people who are going to suffer. They're not going to get medication which they need to survive. So if they don't get, they die. So there is a multiplier effect which needs to be looked at, and that's where I support your point that this aspect of casting the net wider and even going to the very end to prosecute these people should actually be able to be carried by the relevant authorities to ensure that that is done.
And what message does KEMSA send to the international community? Because looking at the Global Fund, it's a good thing that you've mentioned. This is not the first time that we're having issues of procurement, specifically procurement when it comes to KEMSA. Not only Global Fund, we have a number of our stakeholders, international stakeholders. What message does it send? We have a new board, we are cleaning our house. Do that really stay with the confidence that we have in the global international scene?
You see, Global Fund is a major, is a big company which supports healthcare across Africa. I think it's not only in Kenya, and I don't know why people like eating money from Global Fund, because we had the same scandal in Uganda, which also meant, I think, the minister some years back, the minister to be fired. So I think there is a tendency people to just like this money from Global Fund. So the message which the president, I think, is sending is that you cannot be able to steal this money. And Global Fund is also trying to stamp its feet and say, look, if we are giving you this money and you are mismanaging it, then there's no reason for us to give this money. And the buck stops with the president, that at the end of the day, this is your administration. So he has to act strongly the way he has done. And I think the DPP should be able to take up the Assad seat to ensure that these people are actually prosecuted. Secondly, we are in a situation whereby people are just used to stealing money and eating it left, right, and center. Not only Global Fund, but any donor money which comes into the country, people are just have this particular appetite for this money because they feel it's ready money which they need to just push into their pockets. So once we can be able to clean up this mess the way the president has started, the rest of the organization should be able to jump in quickly and be able to set the record straight to actually vindicate themselves and to actually be able to be seen that they're actually supporting the president in cleaning corruption across this country. Once, it doesn't take several people to be prosecuted for us to fight corruption. We just need to send one clear message. We send some few guys to jail, and everybody will be scared stiff. Nobody will sign any document once he's not sure where it's going to land him. And with that, we'll be able to have a clear governance structure in terms of these monies which do come into the country, because I think the challenge comes in whereby these people feel that, and I think the president was very deliberate in the fact that he went for the decision makers. The board is the one which runs KEMSA, so there's no way this one could have run under their noses without them knowing. So it means they were either sleeping or they were in bed with this whole story. And then the permanent secretary is the chief accounting officer in the ministry. So, and also even there's some line people at the ministry have also been sacked. So these are the people who are culpable or who are in charge of that particular Global Fund to come into the country, and they have really faced the consequences, and I think we are setting a good precedent. On this, I can authoritatively say that the president's heart is with the people, not anywhere else.
All right. I will think we're going to put that to a halt in regards to the PS Public Health, who was fired yesterday by the head of state. And actually, it's more or less sends a message to government officials who want to sink their nails and their talons into government money, public coffers, and even donor funding, as Wakili puts it. And we will be taking a quick break, but when we come back, we have a new sheriff in town. We have a new governor, not in the counties, but at the Central Bank of Kenya, who happens to be Dr. Kamau Thuge, who now awaits Parliament's nod to take up the helm at the Central Bank of Kenya. But we're going to talk about that, including the Kenya-Somali border that has been closed for 11 years. So actually, it was actually closed by former President Mwai Kibaki in regards to matters security. But it had affected a lot of things, and people there are upbeat. And it's a good thing that we have one of the leaders from Mandera here who tell us some of the things that this opening up of the border will bring into the country. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Kitwek FM Kegosin. After the dust settled on rigorous campaigns, Kenyans are waiting for elected leaders to deliver on their pledges.
Have you used the hustler fund?
Will your children sleep hungry when you can borrow 500 or 1,000 shillings and they have some food on the table?
So the 500 you're giving me now is my purchasing power has literally been diminished comparing to probably even January or December.
But how have the leaders performed so far?
In terms of the amount of money that is being disbursed, the minimum being 500 shillings, how do you scorecard that?
No, that I'll give it a 2 out of 5.
2 out of 5.
1 out of 5.
I'll still give it 5 out of 5.
Every week, we bring you an honest assessment of the national and county governments.
What is the impact of the Hustlers Fund?
There are people who borrow praying they don't have to pay back. For example, they pray that the owner dies.
The Scorecard. Every Tuesday at 10 p.m. on KBC Channel 1.
Welcome back to KBC News Check, and thank you so much indeed for keeping me company together with my two guests, Dr. Harun Isaac Hassan, a leadership and governance expert, and also we have lawyer Gibson Gisore, who is an advocate of the High Court and also a political and governance expert. We are putting things into perspective, actually in regards to the biggest news yet in regards to how the government is being run after PS Josephine Mburu was fired yesterday by the president in regards to the KEMSA mosquito nets deal. And not only was she fired, also the whole entire board of KEMSA was sent packing, and now we have a new board and a new chairman who happens to be Thuge. I think no Thige. Yeah, the new yes, and we are hoping in Nyakera, yes, Irongo Nyakera, Thuge is the new Central Bank of Kenya governor. But for now, let's first of all cross over to the lakeside city of Kisumu just to pick some of the sentiments in regards to what happened yesterday, being the first top government official to be shown the door because of what she did not oversee in regards to the KEMSA deal. Let's have that. I can see Wycliffe Okech is on standby to do that. Good morning, Wycliffe.
Well, a very good morning to you, Ben, Troy, Njue, back in Nairobi. We are, of course, coming to you live from the lakeside county of Kisumu. Actually, what a wonderful discussion you're having right there in the studio concerning the state of the nation from the perspective of the cost of living and also the fight against draft and against graft rather. And what are some of the perspectives we have from Kisumu? We know that the proposed financial tax 2023 and also the review of the price of petroleum products in the country by IPRA have got people talking about such moves. And what are some of the perspectives from here in Kisumu? And on that note, I'm going to be joined by the National Treasurer Maendeleo Wanawake, Mary Adhiambo, and also with me later on, just a bit after her, we're going to have the people's representatives here in Kondele. That is the member of County Assembly representing Kondele Ward here in Kisumu. And starting off, Mary, you can move just here and look into the camera. You talk to us about how do you feel about the cost of living in the country, and what do you think? They say it is the wearer of the shoe that knows where it pinches, actually. And from your perspective, what is so pinching in the cost of living right now?
Yeah, thank you so much. At the moment,
I'll hold it for you.
Thank you. At the moment, we are experiencing difficulty in the grassroots level. In the homestead, we mothers, we are the owners of the houses, and we know it becomes a challenge when I'm not able to put the 3-course meal to my children. You realize that many parents are now able to offer strong tea in the morning as a breakfast, and that is all until in the evening. When people meet together, when there's some little unga is when people will have uji or a little ugali with mboga. That scenario depicts the level of pinch on the inflation on the people at the grassroots level. It is happening and is a reality on the ground. And maybe the government is not aware has not taken the proper survey and find out actually how this is impacting on the community. It is a reality on the ground.
The government says it has a long-term strategy on lowering the cost of living. That means giving the farmers actually subsidized fertilizer, and which they believe has a long-term consequence of reducing the cost of living. But as we talk right now, how are people maneuvering, and what probably could be the shotgun measures?
Okay, when you see it as an executive and you're planning to save your people, you come up with short-term strategies and long-term strategies. The short-term strategies must be spelled out properly to the people of Kenya, and then we begin to see and feel them. Of late, I've seen the distribution of foodstuff within the communities, and I think it is not across the board. It is specifically targeting people who are experiencing some problem, natural calamities like floods, something like that. But I've not seen a proper strategy of handling the current market situation, because the reason why people are hungry is just because they can't afford sugar, unga, oil, cooking oil, and even transport. to communicate or move around and do the marketing. So I think those are the little things that once you increase the price of petrol, you've turned around the whole country upside down. And the mama mboga will feel it down there. Carrying her vegetable to the market will go up. If she's been paying boda 50 bob, this time around she's going to pay 70 or 100 shillings. That is impacting on her. The space where she's going to sit and place the mboga, the cost of occupying that space is going up. If normally you pay a tax, it's called cess, 20 shillings, it will go up to 40. So it is directly impacting on this lady. And whatever she's taking home at the end of the day is affected. And therefore, she cannot take care of the family as usual. Things have changed. So instead of giving 3 meals a day, I'll end up getting only 1 meal in the morning, or maybe a light meal in the evening to keep the children to go to sleep. Yeah, that is the situation we have on the ground.
Well, now it's kind of dire, if that's the best word we can use to describe the situation. If you were in a position where you could affect the policy changes, what could you do?
From where I sit, I want to focus on the larger population and specifically what are the things that really directly affect them. I would be the last person to increase the price of petrol at this juncture. As a leader in the country, I would negotiate with the providers. I know we sometimes import petroleum products, but I need to negotiate with them and tell them, hey, guys, my country is facing this. If you move this price by even 1 shilling, the impact is going to be adverse. So kindly negotiate. I saw the former leadership. They could even support the unga millers and tell them, I know you go through ABCD, you sit on a table and tell them, please, between this period and this period, because they are planting, they are weeding, they are waiting for crops to come. This is going to take a reasonable time, like 3 months. Please, within this period, sacrifice. I will sacrifice with you. Lower it. Leave it at this stage. Then later, when I'm able to go to the shamba and pinch mboga and harvest maize and sustain my family, at that point, when I increase it, it will be understandable and reasonable. But when you are doing it at the point when I'm at the point of need, you become unfair to me as a consumer.
Thank you so much. We'll continue engaging you more on that, but then for the constraint of time, let me just engage the member of County Assembly representing the Kondele ward. Mashif can just stand here and look into the camera. There is a bill, there's the proposed financial bill 2023, which I'm sure you're already aware of it. What do you make of the component of that bill? And given the state of the nation right now, from the perspective of the cost of living, what does this portend for the country?
I think the Finance Bill 2023 is putting the country in a catastrophic moment, because it's just like jumping from the frying pan into the fire. Because you look at the proposals in the finance bill, more so in the petroleum projects, where the government intends to increase the VAT from 8% to 16%. I think they are going to kill Kenyans in terms of economics, because petrol is a very, very big inflationary driver in Kenya, because it affects all colors, all fields, and therefore, just like the other day, you saw what the EPRA announced, because there was an increment of 15 shillings on kerosene. We had 3 shillings on super petrol and 6 shillings on diesel. That will have what we call a transitivity effect on the livelihood of the mama mboga, because there are those who still depend, and most of them, those on the lower cadre of the pyramid, they still depend on kerosene to cook, even to light for themselves. So you can imagine 15 shilling increase. What will the net resultant effect? In terms of transitivity, our mama mboga will not be able to fend for their own families. They will not be able to put food on the table because they still cook with kerosene. And therefore, I think I have to urge our members of parliament, I want to urge the government, I mean, this is the wrong time. Of course, there's a lot of argument that they have short-term and long-term measures. But again, you know, when you have to institute long-term measures, you must be ready with the short-term measures. And that is where we used to have the subsidies. Of course, I know there are proponents that are against the subsidies. But again, we need the subsidies so that we are able to put the daily bread on the table in as much as we plan for the long-term future of this country in terms of economy. Yeah.
And there's so many components of that, the proposed financial bill 2023. And 20th of this month, that is 20th of May, has been set as the deadline for the public memoranda to be forwarded to the relevant committee. As the County Assembly of Kisumu, is this something that has been under consideration, and what is your take on it as the County Assembly?
Yeah, as the chair budget of Kisumu County Assembly, and together with the leadership and the speaker, I think we are to sit today so that we draft a memoranda as an assembly and those with finance background, so that we also give our advisory as an assembly. And that is why we want to advise the national government, even through our MPs, through the National Assembly, so that there are areas that they should stop. Like, you know, when you find that they give subsidies to those who want to purchase, I mean, they give tax freedom to those who want to purchase choppers. You can imagine that, as opposed to putting these subsidies even on fuel, on food that affect the common mwananchi. So we have a raft of ideas that we are putting together as an assembly, so that we draft our proposal, so that we send it through our member of parliament, through our senator, so that it reaches the national government. And we give our plight, because it affects even the people of Kisumu County. The cost of living is running away, and I think with the recent increase of fuel, it's going to become unbearable for the common mwananchi in Kenya. And therefore, we are urging the government, I mean, look at areas where we can make changes. Just like what we saw yesterday, the corruption. I mean, kill corruption, fight corruption, and we can make a lot of savings through corruption, so that we ensure that we cushion members with, I mean, the members of the public with regards to areas they can get food. Because, you know, these small changes like on fuel and everything, they have what we call a resultant effect in our disposable income. The mama mboga, if at all they were getting even 200 shillings or whatever they work, they are going to get less, because their disposable income is going even to reduce by half. Whoever is getting 500 will only have a disposable income of 250, and therefore that is going to affect the common mwananchi, and I think the government should change its stand with regards to that. Thank you.
And it's better that you've mentioned corruption cases in the country, and graft has been quite a thorn in the flesh in the country, and I'm so sure last evening you must have seen the president shake up the leadership of the KEMSA, where the president fired the PS for health, public health, and also the entire board actually. What do you make of that move?
To me, I feel those are just a little bit, some of them are PR, because we want to see arrest. We don't just want to see people being fired blanketly. We need to see the EACC coming in. We want to see arrests. We want to see prosecutions. We have to see people being taken to book, because if at all there is corruption there, then somebody must have gotten away with money from the government or gotten proceeds from where they were not supposed to get. And therefore, I think it's not just about firing. It should not end with those officials going home, but it should end at the corridors of court. It will end with prosecutions. It will end with arrests, so that we see recovery efforts being made, and that is where we can see that the government is fighting corruption. Right. But going to the media and making pronouncements and firing, I think that is not enough. Right. And I feel the government should do more with regards to corruption, because that is the only place where we can make a lot of savings that should be geared or channeled towards, I mean, a lot of savings and subsidies that can be able to help the government. And one last thing that I have to mention, if you allow.
Maybe if you can just do that in less than a minute, kindly.
Thank you very much. I want to say that, you know, the subsidies are short-term measures. And all these changes with regards to VAT and tax are long-term measures. And therefore, I want to ask the president, in as much as you're working towards the long-term goal of ensuring that the country is stable in terms of economy, ensure that we institute subsidies that are able to cushion our common mwananchi within the short term, 3-6 months, as we work on the long term, so that our people are able to feed as they wait for the long-term gains. Because even the fertilizer subsidy, we haven't seen the effect. We haven't seen the changes, because it's a long-term project. project, but people must eat. Our people must be able to feed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Ben, there has been the Joachim Okech, actually the county assembly representative representing Kondele Ward, and actually the one who spoke earlier, that is Mary Odhiambo, National Treasurer, Maendeleo ya Wanawake. They're giving us their perspectives with regard to the state of nation from the perspective of the cost of living and actually the cases of graft cases in the country. And like we had them mention, there is actually they're appealing to for the government to institute some shorter measures, among them instituting some subsidies to cushion Kenyans from the high cost of living, even as the government plans long-term measures to arrest the same. Well, it has been a conversation that is continuous actually, and on that allow me to hand it back to you in studio so that you can carry it on. Ben Troy, back to you.
Thank you so much, Wycliffe Okech from the lakeside city of Kisumu. He has engaged the treasurer for the Maendeleo ya Wanawake there in Kisumu, and also Joachim Okech, who is the MCA for Kondele Ward and also the chair of the budget committee there of the County Assembly of Kisumu. And of course, the high cost of living is on every Kenyan's lips, and you'll have to pay more. You'll have to pay more. You'll have to pay more because of the fuel after the prices announced by EPRA, that is the day before yesterday, that is at night. And for the next 1 month, the fuel costs have also jumped. And to be specific, you pay more for fuel over the next 1 month following the increase of pump prices, following higher landed cost of super petrol and removal of subsidies on kerosene and diesel. The cost of super petrol is up by 3 shillings and 40 cents. Diesel has increased by 6 shillings and 40 cents, while kerosene has seen a significant jump by 15 shillings and 19 cents. Gentlemen, weighing in on what actually they have talked about and looking at the fuel prices, in Nairobi 182, Mombasa 179, Mandera 195. We are edging towards the 200 mark. Eldoret at 182. You look at the diesel, 168, 165, 181. We also headed to the 200 mark. Kerosene, 161, 158, 174, and 168. To be fair, we almost headed to the 200 mark in all the fuel that we are using in the country, be it petrol, be it diesel, or be it kerosene. And there's something that I picked from the MCA there. He's talking about, indeed, yes, that we need short-term measure. Being one, he is still on the subsidies, and especially for kerosene, which have been scrapped as well. And looking at the finance bill as proposed, some of the cronies of the head of state have talked about we're not going to change even a comma or a decimal in that report and in that bill. But that will really bring about a lot of anguish in Kenyans, because they have talked about the Maendeleo of ya Wanawake woman, Treasury has talked about it's even becoming hard to put 3 meals on the table, even for salaried employees like us. Doc?
Yeah, I think as you can see from the lakeside city, it's not only the lakeside city that has this issue.
Yes.
And each and every other person, including my village in Takaba, Mandera West, the same cry is going on. It is true, increased living cost means many households will they have to cut back on their basic essential things. You know very well, a country like this, much of the thing is controlled by fuel. Fuel is a key thing that, initiates every other expenditure. For example, our factories will use fuel. The vehicles that are used, they use fuel. The transport system, and many other things that people rely on, including the basic essential, like the kerosene. You know very well we don't have much firewood, and we don't encourage people to use firewood at the moment because of environmental factor. And currently people are using kerosene, which is also one of the things that affects the environment. But we have no option. It's much better cutting trees. Using the kerosene is much better than cutting trees. And the common person who uses this fuel will have to cut on most of their basic needs. And you'll find that people will going to forego either a meal or even 2 courses of meal and live on one course of meal. And when you look at that keenly, I think this country, there are some things first I wanted to put clear. Tax is paid by consumers. And it's only the country that where tax is paid by consumers because you are charged tax for consuming. Not any of the rich people or that pays basically who sells items or goods and services to consumers pay the tax themselves. Tax is usually added on top of whatever you buy. Go to the supermarket, you will see the money you pay includes the tax. Yes. Ideally, in normal sense, it will have been the money you pay will be the cost, the actual cost of that commodity that you take will be the one which will going to be charged the tax on. That way we are able to reduce the cost of living. But if everything goes to the consumer, then life will be very hard. For example, I can't go to Mandera now because if I go to Mandera with a cost of 200 shilling per liter of fuel, means by the time I get there, that's 1,200 kilometers, and a car will be, you know, for example, my car, 1 liter just runs for around 6 to 7 kilometers per liter. That means then I'm going to use 45,000 to get home. Where will that money come from? You see now the way the cost of living is becoming more difficult for even the people who are the middle level class. Now, what about our common people, the pyramid there, the larger pyramid where the poor people, the people who cannot even afford $1 a day will have more challenge than us who can probably cut our costs slightly downwards to accommodate the situation. For them, they have nothing to cut and nothing to accommodate. Now we will turn this country into beggars. So I think one thing that we need to do is that we need to reduce costs in terms of our expenditures and reduce tax on key essential things for the basic consumers, the people in the lower pyramid. And then that way we are able to run a society that will live within the expected, livelihoods that they are able to run their common things. The other thing that I think I look at is that I don't know what happened. I mean, we have been told if there will be government-to-government engagement in terms of fuel and buying fuel with Kenyan currency, the cost will go a bit down. What I don't understand, on the media, what I heard, this I don't have a fact, but that was what the media was saying, is that clearing that commodity at the port has increased the cost. Why is it that the port is increasing the cost, yet the aim was to go and have this cut cost from the source so that we use our currency, and government to government, we thought the way we have been told we're going to reduce the cost. So if that was the case, then I think something is not right, something is not going on well, because there are some companies who are earlier on agents of those major companies who are supplying. We were told these ones were exploiting Kenyans, and now there were 2 companies that have been engaged and contracted to do this work, and we are seeing they are now exploiting more than even the previous ones, which we have never known that they were exploiting us more than these other ones. So the game is the same, and I tend to think we need to cut costs in all aspects. We can still see, for example, let's start from the president. President has a huge motorcade whenever he's going somewhere. I think the basic thing is that you cut costs, therefore means you start from yourself.
You lead by example.
You lead by example.
Right.
So I think with our country, it's not very risky for the president to have 200 vehicles following him or 30 vehicles following him. I think basically, in principle, we want to keep his security well because he's a sample of the country. But the bottom line is that let's cut our expenditures. Right. The more we cut our expenditures, the better for the common person in the lower pyramid for him to have a comfortable life.
Gibson, and picking from where Doc has talked about, yes, indeed, we have a government-to-government a deal that Among others, was supposed to see the cost of fuel come down and, of course, to strengthen the shilling. Well, it might not happen right now, but looking at the pump prices now and looking at them after the finance bill, because if it sails through, we have increased the VAT from 8% to 16%. So definitely the cost of fuel will go up. And I remember over the weekend I was in county number 14, Embu County, for the launch of Ngemi FM, and I was speaking with some of my colleagues that we have had an opportunity to work with, and they're telling me in the morning you have to, you are eating food, not having tea and maybe some slices of bread, but they're eating food because they have to skip lunch, and those are salaried people. The pressure is even dire for people who are earning less than $1 a day, just like Doc has talked about. Are there any more intervention that can be done? Because at the end of the day, if at all the VAT is going on fuel is going to go from 8% to 16%, in as much as the president the other day talked about our tax is one of the lowest at about 14%, and compared us to South Africa, Tunisia, and I think Morocco, in as much as we do that, we cannot compare that, because looking at the cost of energy, for example, in South Africa, they're even using nuclear energy. So the power costs are a little bit down. If the fuel goes from 8% VAT to 16%, it's not only going to affect fuel products, but it's going to affect other sectors as well.
I think, Bentry, what we need to look at is the aspect of I mean, much as the president gave those comparisons, you look at the countries he's comparing to their countries which have their systems running, and they are not in the same place where we are. Mm-hmm. But the advantage of staying in South Africa for some time, the issue is South Africa, you cannot compare South Africa. You know, South Africa produces almost more than half of the power consumed in the whole of Africa. Mm-hmm. So we are not in the same scale. Yes. And then they have like 2-3 ports which they rely on, and then they have coal which they use for powering their turbines to produce power, and coal they don't import. They just mine and use, which we don't have. So we are not in the same level with the South Africans. I think that will not be a good mix. You look at the other countries. Is it Morocco, you say? Morocco is next to the Middle East, and the neighbors Algeria produce oil, so they could be able to get into a local arrangement with them. So there are factors working for these people, so that as much as their taxation might be high, there are some things which are highly subsidized. You could find that they don't pay for education. In South Africa, education is almost free up to university, and actually even universities were complaining that it should be totally free for everybody, which is not the case here. So a parent pays fees for everyone. For everything, he has to ensure that they feed. He has to ensure that he has to go to work. You see, even employees who are salaried cannot be able to pay for a simple lunch. So that tells you that really they should have started pinching. So I think I don't agree with the president's example that we are not as taxed as these countries, because the circumstances in these countries are not the same as what we are having here. So as Dr. Ria said, I would want to agree with him that really there is a very big challenge. I have a couple of friends who cannot be able to drive their vehicles to the village to go see their parents. So we are also having even parents suffer. Because the kids, I have even some friends who have very good German machines who decide to use matatu now. I mean, you show up in the village, people wonder, did this guy go bankrupt? And you know, that already has made you look like you are not in control of your affairs, and that is really demeaning and making people look bad. So what we need to do as a country, really, I thought that the idea of government to government deal was something which was going to pay off, but clearly it's not. But then we also understand that government is pressed by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, who are lending. Some of these provisions are really their conditions. It's not like the president really decides to tax Kenyans. He's told that, I mean, if we have to get you some money, you have not done something. So for those people, they're not Kenyans, they don't care. So it's important that I think where the president is insisting, let's get our own money so that we can be in control of our affairs, because as long as we keep borrowing, there are more conditions which are dire and more hurting to Kenyans which are going to come, because we don't have a choice. To provide basic services, we need to get the money. So if we cannot pay people who are in the public service, we need to borrow the money and pay them. And when we borrow, those are the conditions which come with it. So we are in a situation where we can't move forward and we can't move backwards. So that is the kind of tight situation I think is trying to work around, so that to ensure that we be able to generate enough revenue, we stop borrowing, so that we can now start subsidizing whatever it is we feel we need to subsidize. But the mechanisms he's using is what, I mean, I don't know whether it's really the best, because we feel that there are some other places he needs to look at which can be able to bring in more money and more sustainable without looking at taxation, because taxation in itself is akin to what Churchill said, that it's like somebody who is standing in a bucket and wants to lift himself up, which is not possible. But then I think being the president, he needs to really consult well with his economists. I'm not an economist myself, but things are not going well, and he needs to do something, and it's really upon him to actually ensure that whatever decision he makes is one which is going to help Kenyans at the end of the day.
Doc, and I remember during the interview on Sunday, the president said that IMF had actually advised him to borrow more, and he said, no, I'm not going to borrow more. And are we in a catch situation, just like Wakili is talking about? We cannot move back and we cannot go ahead. So a little bit, we are a bit stagnant, because even the economy itself is not quite moving yet. And looking at the cost of fuel now, and looking at what we expect if the finance bill sails the way it is, this is going to be more pain for the country.
Yeah, I think from the way he has expressed himself and how he took the issue of IMF,
of borrowing,
I think something is going on, and it's something that is challenging for him himself, because one side the country is in crisis with no resources or money to run. On the other hand, the donors or the IMF and the lenders, the people who will be giving us loans, are trying to put strict measures in terms of their conditions. And that sometimes put decision makers in catch-22. And I'm sure one way or another, IMF way will be the way to go, because they are the ones who are going to move you out of the crisis, but with conditions. And I'm sure the president must be thinking through the conditions they have put, and probably deliberating on which conditions he's able to carry and which one he's not able to carry for the betterment of this nation. If he doesn't say yes to all, but one way or another he will going to say yes to some, that means he will still make a way out of the current situation. But one thing that is likely to affect us in terms of the current crisis with fuel and as well as the cost of living and taxation is that there are many businessmen who are now trying to move to other countries. I know there are quite a number of businessmen. Myself, I know them. They have moved to some other countries. They're pulling out of this country, and they had a very huge factories, producing juice, producing, products that are consumable, and they were distributing all these products to East and Central Africa
because of the cost of power.
Because of the cost of power and because of cost of taxation. They have started now moving to those countries, some of the countries in Central Africa. I know there's a huge company that has moved to Congo. And it's shocking. Congo is a country that is just coming up, but we have pulled them out of this place to go and invest in that part of Africa. And what does that mean? A number of people will lose their jobs. That means if now 1,000 people lose their jobs, where will they go? And we have no jobs for them. And the essence of the Kenya Kwanza government was to create employment. 500,000, is that what sometimes back was in the limelight? And I think the only thing that now we can do is, I think, I have earlier on mentioned, the best thing for us is reduce our expense and make sure that where taxation is not very much applicable, we reduce it. And where we think that we must tax, let's tax them. But we must not make this side better and the other side collapse, and then move out of it. For example, Mandera, I think it was a very good news that we hear borders will be opened.
Yes.
I'm sure we're going to have a discussion if there will be time.
Yes.
But I want to link it to this current situation. I don't think if now we will be able to get our fuel from Nairobi or Mombasa to Mandera, because the cost will not be realistic. And that means then we'll be getting our fuel from Somalia or Ethiopia, which will be cheaper, and we'll be able to, do basic things in terms of, producing food in that area. And that way means then, you see the market has gone to the neighboring country, because you'll be buying hard currency from Somalia or Ethiopia, and then you'll be coming in the country to sell them. Actually, fuel, the cost of a fuel per liter is $1 in Mogadishu.
It's around 100 and something, yes. 120
there. 137 for now. Dollar has gone up slightly. 137, and that is a country with no, proper system. The government are struggling because there's nothing in place. But still, they are able to contain their tax. They are able to contain
because they know very
prices.
well that if these taxes go to the Mwananchi,
absolutely,
we're going to have issues.
Exactly.
And I'm still on the finance bill. The Kenyans have until 20th, and I think if we have the story on finance bill, because the government plans to lower the cost of living through a raft of tax proposals and the implementation of various policies. And I remember the majority leader saying that we are exempting liquefied petroleum gas LPG to make it affordable and the use of dirty fuels. Let's go to the Mwananchi. The Mwananchi has until 20th to give his or her own inputs. How can it be factored in? And can it be factored in to the point that we get rid of some of the proposals in that? Because looking at the majority leader at the Senate talked about, we are not going to change even a comma or even a full stop. It's going to sail the way it is. That is exactly what they want, and I'm quite sure that is exactly what the president wants. Wananchi, Wanjiko, who is going to get all these taxes?
I don't want to go into the sentiments of the majority leader of the Senate.
Yeah. But can Wanjiko's voice be voiced enough in the finance bill, because there's public participation?
Yes, it will, and that's where I want to go with what Njue said. And Njue was very clear that whatever the Treasury comes up with as proposals, they are not final, and they can be looked at in a different way. That's where Parliament is a house of debate, where we will be able to discuss, agree to disagree, and see what we can be able to remove. Because we are also Kenyans, we know we need to listen to Mwananchi. There is the aspect of whether they can be listened to. Yes, they will be listened to, because the Constitution allows us much. Because if they fail to do that, then somebody can be able to go to court that indeed whatever it is that we put across or the finance bill is not representative of what the public expects, and that will cause more problems, because it will, once the finance bill has not been passed, you cannot start using, you cannot start appropriating the monies which have not been factored in the finance bill. So that will delay the government structures and processes. It's not only in Kenya, it has happened even in the US. You remember in Trump's time, there's what is called shutting down the government. So sometimes even the governors have spoken as much. At some point, they were also trying to say that we're going to shut down counties. That means that they are not in agreement. There are some monies they have been expecting, they have not received it, they don't know. They are pressed for providing services which they cannot be able to provide, since they are the people on the ground. So we don't want to see such a situation. And statements like the ones being, you've said, from the leader majority of the Senate are grandstandings which cannot be able to help the situation. We need to go into this with an open mind, see what it is that we can be able to allow and what what it is that we can be able to remove from that list, so that at the end of the day, we all live in this country and we don't want people to suffer so much, and then others would be, our government to feel like it's entitled to the monies which they want to run the government, and the Mwananchi is suffering because government needs to be a representative of the Mwananchi. That aspect of checks and balances must be able to be very well inculcated in Parliament, and it's unfortunate that the majority leader is actually speaking that way, because he actually does not understand his role and does not understand the role of Parliament, because now he's speaking as government while he should be speaking on behalf of Mwananchi or having an open mind. And that is the challenge of leaders who we get from leaders who get into office and then all of a sudden change and forget that they have actually been elected. So that is on the first part. The second part is what Dr. has said, that at the end of the day, we need to really ask ourselves, we are doing all this, what are we achieving? Because we also need to compare ourselves with the rest of our neighbors. At the end of the day, we're going to have a situation where people are going to engage in engaging in adulterating fuel, and that is still going to be disadvantageous to the government because it won't be getting the tax it wants, and then to the Mwananchi will be consuming these particular fuels. Because whichever way, you need to have your vehicle on the road to deliver so that you get paid. So if you don't, if there is a way, somebody promising to get you, then there are those people who live on the other side. There's those people who live near the border points. You know, vehicles have not been stopped to go across. You can go across, you fuel full tank and come back. So as Njue has said, there is the aspect of Somalia. Now that we are opening the borders, I think we'll have more business. We'll be giving more business to someone in terms of fueling and coming back. So and Ethiopia and the Tanzania and the like. So we need to also make these particular decisions, bearing in mind what are our neighbors doing, because at some point you find that fuel passes through Kenya and goes to Uganda, and then Uganda is way cheaper than the fuel here. So people will opt to go and fuel in Uganda and then come back, so that they can be able to run their affairs. We don't want such a situation, because we'll be losing money instead of getting the same taxes which we expect. So government needs to be very deliberate and clear what it is that they want to achieve and how far can they go to achieve that, in the paradigm where they have to consider the aspects of uplifting Mwananchi, and the Mwananchi be able to do their business without hindrance, and also getting their tax, so that it's a balanced equation, not one where you tell us that we are not going to change anything. I mean, taxation, there is a rule which in law which says there should be no taxation without representation. But now if you post figures on me, it means you're not representing me. You need to listen to me so that I tell you this is the much I can be able to offer, so that we agree to disagree and get to some place where we are at a balance.
Sure, and gentlemen, allow me to tie this to the new Central Bank of Kenya governor, where former National Treasury PS Dr. Kamau Thuge has been nominated as the 10th governor of the Central Bank of Kenya to take over from Dr. Patrick Njoroge, whose tenure ends next month. And Dr. Thuge, who is an economist, has served in senior roles within fiscal, monetary, and economic policy making positions, both locally and abroad, and has been serving as a senior advisor and head of fiscal and budget policy within the presidency, and is also a member of the President's Economic Council. The incoming Central Bank governor was interviewed for the post alongside Dorcas Motonyi, Harun Sirima, Edward Sambili, Nancy Onyango, and Aidan Mohamed. President William Ruto has transmitted Dr. Thuge's nomination to the National Assembly for consideration as set out in the Constitution. Gentlemen, one of the key roles I believe the Central Bank of Kenya governor will have is to try and strengthen the shilling. And at the end of the day, if we strengthen our shilling, why we are in this position we are is because we also have a weak shilling. So if we strengthen the Kenya shillings, we can offload a lot of pressure on the shilling, and subsequently we can be able to at least manage some of the things that we have, because partly why the cost of fuel is quite high is because we have a weak shilling. What do you think, gentlemen? Some of the roles that, what is first thing you believe that the new CBK governor will have to do? It's coming at a very torrid time.
First, I want to congratulate Kamau Thuge because he's been in the realms of the treasury and around treasury issues for long. I'm also now informed that he worked with the IMF for quite long, from around 80s to around early 2000. I mean, that's quite a long time. And there's a tendency that now we are fully relying on ex-employees of IMF or World Bank to fit into, I don't know whether that's where we have had an affinity for their loans or what. But
yeah, because it has been
they have been too much.
And the outgoing governor was, I believe, was
actually
the World
an advisor to the director of IMF.
Oh, IMF, yes.
Yes. So these fellas, I'm wondering what is the connection, because now we expect things to be better, but we are getting loans and loans and loans instead of. And now we hope that he will be able to deviate from the script and be able to tell us how we can be able. But Bentroy, I think there's also some very important point I wanted to put across, that on the issue of the shilling. His first responsibility will be to stabilize the shilling so that we can be able to balance and see. There's a tendency that Njoroge, the living, used to give me some assurance. When he could speak, you could see somebody who understands the situation. And in most cases, things were within his control till now that things are now getting out of hand. I don't know whether he slept well. He knew that he's going to get out. But then he also told us that there were some challenges when we were having close to election. There was some malpractice, which were, though we have not seen any prosecutions yet. So this one comes in, we expect him to do a good, clean job. We expect him to ensure that, because with the situation we are having, we are going to have banks that recording losses, and you know that's loss of revenue, or start engaging in malpractice. So we will be able to see him be able to strengthen the conditions, the fiscal monetary policies, which will work together with the board of the central bank. We remember now the central bank is also run by a board, which I don't know whether the term of the guys of Nyaoga has come to an end. We'll be able to expect somebody else to take over, so that we can, because this is where really the games are to be played to ensure that our economy gets back to its feet. The kind of advisory I will also be expecting them to advise government, because everybody is talking about taxing, but then if you need money to come into this country, you don't look inwards, you look outwards. We should be discussing. I was really surprised that the trade minister was talking about us exporting, is it 7,000 heads of cattle to the Middle East? Why are we exporting? And yet we have a KMC. Why don't we just have these animals slaughtered here? We sell the meat so that we get more money and we get jobs, because we will be getting jobs and we will be getting the foreign exchange. Because if the KMC is not enough, why don't we add some more KMCs so that we can be able to you can be able to get this particular money? There is a sense in which that I expect agriculture to be picking up, especially horticulture. During the Kibaki era, it really picked up so well. We were getting a lot of money, because other than tea, horticulture was contributing, I think, the second largest foreign exchange, and other than tourism also, whereby now we are not seeing incentivizing the people who are doing horticulture so that they can export more. They have been complaining that KQ is exploiting them in terms of carrying the flowers to wherever. So we need to see some proactive steps, because these are things which can bring money so that we don't tax our people more. We need to see people, of course, people being encouraged to set up light industries, which we can be able to manufacture things which can be able to sell even to our neighbors in the region. Remember, Tanzania has been able to increase their sales to Kenya than while Kenyans have been reducing. Those are some of the things we should be sitting and saying. We have our neighbors whom we are trading with, and we are losing business while they are gaining. They are doing more business with us, and we are doing less with them.
Yes.
Where did the rain start beating us? How can we be able to even get a road to Juba to stop us passing through Uganda, so that we can be able to deliver our goods to Juba quickly and be able to. We used to be the biggest trading partners with Uganda. We are no longer. These are some of the small things we need to be looking at, because the Southern Sudan came up. And then I'm really glad with the situation with Somalia, really is a bit stabilizing. Once we open the border posts, we should be able to be discussing whether we can be able to even do a road with the donors. We do a road to Kismayu, we have a road to, so that we can have meaningful trade.
Yeah.
You know, with a road being there, even the terrorists run away because they are being exposed. They want to operate in the dark.
Yeah.
When you do a road, these people will run off. So those are some of the things we need to be exposed, because we are having a military there. The military should be able to facilitate our interests. Because once we do not, once you bring in the money economy, business is able to thrive. Nobody will be willing to carry a gun while he can be able to set up a shop and sell and get money.
Indeed.
Yes, so those are some of the
it's a good observation, because when the Kenya and Somali border was closed, it was majorly because of security issues. And I would like you, Doc, to actually come in on this. The border points in Mandera, Kiunga, and Ras Kamboni were shut over runaway insecurity. Now the CS yesterday had some good news for both Kenyans and Somalis, and especially where we are talking about this Mandera, Kiungani, and Ras Kamboni. In the next 90 days, we expect the border to be open. Of course, there are some concerns in terms of security, but there is also bigger concerns in terms of business. Kindly talk about
it. First and foremost, I would like to thank the professor for thinking twice and noting the importance of having those borders open for the betterment of the communities living around the border and Kenya at large.
Yes.
Somalia has been our business hub as Kenyans for so long, including the Magendo time when clothes were coming from Somalia and they were coming to Kenya through a difficult time, when others were coming from India and they were easily sailing here, and Kenyans were being sold to a very high cost, and people could not go into a shop and buy a shirt of their choice. Somalia was easy to bring those garments and sell to Kenyans and put on a very good cloth like any other person, whether you are able or not. Secondly, the business that goes on in Somalia does not produce much. And the fact that they used to have very huge farms in the southern part of Somalia, where they used to produce bananas and sugar and other things. This is no longer there because of the long-term, war that they have gone through. But most of their things, they import it. Everything that is used in Somalia, with the exception of some few vegetables and here and there, most of it are imported. And that means then, if we open our doors as Kenyans from this aspect of border, areas, border products from outside, you will have to buy it with hard currency. So you change your money into hard currency and now start buying products from outside. That way, the cost will still increase. You sell out, the less pressure on the shilling, and the higher chance of the new governor, reducing the dollar against the shilling.
Thank you so much indeed. Thank you. Unfortunately, we are out of time. This is a discussion that we're gonna have because at the end of the day, the Kenya-Somali border, after almost 12 years, has been reopened, but in phases in the next 90 days, as announced by Professor Kithure Kindiki, who is the Interior Cabinet Secretary. We have also looked at a number of issues, including the sacking of health PS, the high cost of living, and also the finance bill. Remember, you only have a couple of days, because on 20th of this month, the public participation will be concluded, and from there on, we will leave the biggest chunk of the work to our members of parliament. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. I had been hosting Dr. Harun Isaac Hassan. We had an advocate of the High Court and also a leadership and governance expert.